I would define my spirituality as believing in something, and how I would describe it is that I'm not capable or developed enough to say what that something is. I'm not even sure a human being has the right language or capacity of awareness or understanding to even begin to describe it in language or even in human thought. And I believe the only way that human beings can describe this something, if you want to call it God or whatever you want to call it, is through creativity, and in my case through music.
And tubular bell.
I was born in a sort of middle-class family in Reading. My father was a doctor, my mother was an ex-nurse. She was a Catholic. My father, I believe, was Protestant. She was quite strict about us having a Catholic upbringing. We went to Sunday school and we took First Communion and things like that. But I remember being uncomfortable in churches and with vicars and people. I didn't understand why people would be dressed in black and looking so serious. And a church was a big scary place, you know, and very echoey. I didn't feel the sort of warmth of religion. So I didn't really become involved with it like that. Although I was expected to become part of that because of my mother. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mother started at the beginning of a long illness, which after about 15 years eventually killed her. It was a sort of psychological, emotional illness. She spent her life from the age of about 5, I remember she was going in and out of different hospitals, people going to see various doctors. She was very upset. It was really, the thing that started it off was she gave birth to a child that suffered from Down syndrome, and for one reason or another she didn't bring the child into the family, so we never saw this child. I believe it died when it was about 3 years old, and I think it was partly grief that made her so upset. And in those days, doctors would prescribe tranquilizers and barbiturates. And so all that did was suppress the grief. So she never was able to express it and experience it. At the time, I was too young to know what was going on. To me, just life was total turmoil with terrible emotional upheavals and witnessing scenes of, human unhappiness that I would not like any child to be subjected to. But the good thing about that is once I picked up a guitar, I discovered that there was a world of music which totally shielded me and protected me from this emotionally charged atmosphere. And when I was in my world of music, I was in a world so real and full of warmth and magic and love and just all the things that life should be about. And I loved it so much that it eventually led me onto a career as a musician.
Introducing the grand piano.
persuaded my father to buy me a proper guitar, and I spent every free hour when I wasn't at school practicing acoustic guitar, and I got to be very good by the time I was about 10 or 11. I started playing in folk clubs. It actually became my way of communication. I was very shy and hesitant. I couldn't really string a sentence together, and I couldn't converse with people. I used to say, how do you manage to get all these ideas and talk? I couldn't do that, but I could pick up an acoustic guitar and play, and that was my way of communication. The guitar was like a voice sort of talking to me. Then I discovered classical music, and classical music was like a sort of wonderland of landscapes and characters. I used to think of, I still do in fact, as every instrument as a character, like an oboe would be, some sort of, they didn't actually have bodies, but they were definitely talking, and they were saying things that were much more interesting to me, and I felt more valid than human language. It was musical language. It was just pure emotion and pure feeling, without words. Music was giving me protection against my family life. I mean, if you can imagine waking up night after night hearing like arguments and crying and things going on in the next room, and then hearing an ambulance coming, sort of watching my mother disappearing yet again in the ambulance, And then there was the loneliness after she'd gone, when she was in hospital. And the music just filled up that empty space of her being gone, plus protected me from the emotional turbulence which was surrounding the whole thing. Well, after I discovered music, then I sort of marked time throughout school. I didn't really like school. I wasn't very sociable, but the attention and the feeling that I got playing music was really approaching spirituality, and I determined it was going to be my career. And on my 15th birthday, I left school and started working with my sister. That was the sort of late 60s. My mother by that time had become, quite sick. She went through a short period of trying to get herself back together and get her nursing job back. But one day I opened the front door, and this two senior nurses were sort of carrying her like this, and she'd totally gone to pieces. And I could see then that, she'd never get her nurse job back because she'd turned up for work drugged and drunk, you see. So she would be sort of struck off, and I felt very sad that hadn't happened. Then my father left home, and things were just beginning to happen for me in music. I was getting a little reputation. There'd be a tiny little notice somewhere in a Melody Maker about the guitarist in this band, and things were starting to happen. So I just realized for my own safety, I had to leave home and live in London. I got involved with various drugs like people did at the time, with LSD and hashish, and it all ended up sort of exploding inside my mind. The whole of the childhood thing, perhaps it wasn't help, the drugs at the time, but I can only describe the experience as a nervous breakdown. Or I was speaking to a therapist in Los Angeles last year, actually, explaining how I felt, and she said, that was a existentialist crisis. And I went, it's got a name. I was so pleased that it had a name. At least somebody had a name for this feeling, Hooray, I had an existentialist crisis. I didn't know what it was, but all I knew that was when I looked out at the world, I didn't see people, I saw biological mechanisms. I looked at the sky. It didn't look blue. I didn't know what color was. I forgot language. Just everything broke down as if I was suddenly some sort of very primitive microbe taken out of the sea and suddenly stuck in the middle of 20th century London. And everything was totally confusing and scary, and people looked like monsters, you know. It was a world without love, without spirituality. It was purely physical world. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. It was actually a living hell. And, you know, I didn't know what to do at all. I went to see my doctor. He gave me some tranquilizers. I discovered that alcohol helped, so I sort of soaked myself in alcohol. All the time, the one thing that I could relate to was music. So long as if I was playing music, it was like putting on a really soft coat or rug, you know, and I was shielded, cocooned in this musical egg. Really, that feeling, the fear of seeing the world like that was something that lasted for a long, long time, right all the way through Tubular Bells, my most successful period. It also stopped me from doing a lot of things which were expected of me, stopped me talking to people, stopped me traveling. I couldn't fly anywhere. I used to get panic attacks in the most calm, lovely places. I'm sitting in a lovely garden, butterflies, and then I get this feeling I'd see the world in this incredible focus. You know, this entirely biological, scientific world without love and without spirituality. And so I needed to rediscover that spirituality somehow. And then came a time sort of around the late 70s where I really was just about friendless. As chance would have it, there was my engineer's wife at the time was living next door, and she just got involved with this organization called Exegesis. And I contacted them and you know, made up my mind I was going to find out what the hell I was scared of. I was experiencing raw fear. And I went to do this course, and after about the third day, you know, I was sort of bullied into looking at what was scaring me. And so what happened was I sort of relaxed, or tried to relax, but I was scared out of my mind. I was going to look at this fear and find out what it was. And I sort of blacked out, and I started making a noise. They encouraged me to make a noise to express this feeling, and I started making this amazing noise. And after about, I don't know how long it was, I was hyperventilating and making a screaming noise, which is like a grown-up version of a baby crying. And then suddenly all these people jumped on me, and I was like pushed down. I mean, that's what it looked like to the outside, but for me it felt like, oh, I'm back in the womb again. And it really felt like that, and they gradually let off the pressure. And the most important thing about it was that I had the courage to look at what I was scared of. And all I felt was, remembered in great detail the feeling of just being born, and the mucus on your hands. And but in this exegesis experience, I'd had the courage to face what I was scared of, and found out all it was I didn't like being born. And that was incredibly funny. I thought, is that all it was, all these years? You know, I had to experience it for myself. Then I realized that there were a lot of other things that I needed to experience. Things that happened in my childhood relating to my mother and my family and all that. And then the last few years I began a process of psychotherapy looking at these individual areas. And I've come quite a long way. actually just turning 40 now, and I'm starting to enjoy life. Life is ceasing to become, a big burden, a big challenge. You can simply just get up in the morning, do things, and enjoy things. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to visit the world and explore the world. And I went to America, and I went to the Far East, and started to see different parts of the world. And it was very interesting when I went to the Far East to see totally different cultures. I saw how very much on the surface the religion is for the people there in, say, Indonesia or Malaysia. Everywhere you walk, you'll see little shrines, and it's very much part of their culture. It's out on the streets, and I love that feeling. In Great Britain, the spirituality is sort of in the church. Whereas in these other places, it's everywhere. Every house will have its little shrine. I think it's because of having seen the raw reality of Earth. I know that can't be all there is, and so I'm sort of drawn to these other areas where people express and explore their more spiritual feelings, because that's a human need. To think that all there is to the universe is just the physical and the scientific is like having the intelligence and consciousness of something very primitive. That can't be like that. It's too simple and pointless. So I believe that there is a whole lot more than that, and that's why I'm sort of explore these places when I go and visit them. And I when I'm making my music, when it's going really well, I do get into a very spiritual kind of feeling. I get amazing energy. I can work very hard for long periods and achieve this state of musical spirituality, which I think and I hope is the reason that I'm successful at making music, because music that doesn't have that sort of warmth and completeness, to me, is just like water. It passes you by. It doesn't envelop you and hold your attention and make you feel that wonderful feeling. So in terms of spirituality, music is my spirituality. One of the things about music is that it doesn't have language. See, language is a function of the human brain. We need to be able to describe things. Cup, light. Music doesn't have that. It's sort of, it just says things directly, and you can say so much more. You can't describe it because I believe human beings are very primitive. We got stuck in logic and brain functions. It's like computer programming. But there's another part of you which is so much more powerful and intuitively understands things. And it's very badly developed. But, the human race is very young and very primitive, and we need to develop those areas of ourselves. We will become more advanced in those areas, we will be able to understand these spiritual things. And they'll become, that's the real purpose of human life as far as I'm concerned. When I make music, I don't think, well, I'm going to be really spiritual here. I mean, I just sit down like an artist with a blank sheet of paper and sort of turn on the music tap and see what comes out. And quite often what comes out isn't very spiritual at all. Sometimes it'll be like pulling your hair out, piece by piece, or, I don't know, pulling your teeth out. Life is like that. Life isn't all plain sailing and beautiful and spiritual. There's some awful things which I've personal first-hand experience of. And sometimes I feel a need to express those things, like the end of part 1 of Omadorn is this screaming guitar, which, I remember when I did it was exhausting, agony, playing this and expressing this terrible feeling. There was always the thought that if I managed to sort myself out psychologically, that I'd lose my creativity. What has turned out to be correct is that I've lost the initial motivation for being creative, but I haven't lost the actual creativity. It's just I make music for different reasons now. It's not so desperate that I make music, I don't have to do it anymore, but I still enjoy it and love doing it, so I will carry on doing it, but it's not life or death anymore. The real joy that can come from life is through feelings of spirituality. That's why whenever I'm in a city, I'll always visit the church, or in Mexico I'll go to an ancient place or some center of spirituality. And that's not just simply this feeling that when we die we'll be gone forever, which, is not really the point of it. I mean, we're privileged enough to be alive, and if we have any feelings of spirituality, we're even more privileged. The saddest people in the world who don't have any feelings of spirituality, they get bitter and be unhappy. So I respect people who've got spirituality. I certainly don't respect people who only believe that their way is the right way. And the only way I can express that spirituality is through my music, and I hope I've done that as well as I possibly can.
Faith and Music returns tonight at 11:35 with the reflections of Boy George.